Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Inverted Orthodoxy Podcast. I'm Blake, and I'm alongside Pastor Kyle. We're missing Pastor Doug today.
We are.
He's on holidays, and that is good for him. But this podcast is about answering questions, and people send them in, and we keep trying to answer them best we can. We like to take you on a lot of twists and turns and all the adventures through faith because there is lots of ideas out there, and we love getting to answer questions. So
Totally.
yeah,
We have 20-something questions now. We asked and you answered.
nice.
We have loads there, which is wonderful. It actually might be more than that because a couple of these have a few built within each one. So I'm very thankful for you guys listening and sending in questions. But I have started recording the dates of which times when we got some of these questions. So today, if we even get through a few of them, we're still dealing with questions in August, and it is now the 22nd of October. So if you sent in questions, I appreciate that, but I'm letting you know now. It might take us a while to get to your questions.
Yeah.
That's all I'm acknowledging.
Just keep listening. We'll get there.
Yeah, totally. But the way to get to the top,
There you
the
go.
way to make sure your question is answered in quick order is to engage in conversation with us by either accusing us of something, asking us for further explanation, or recanting. So we've got some AER.
Time for accusations, explanations, and recantations.
Sorry, Blake, I took your job there.
No, that was a great transition. I loved it.
I saw the transition in my head. I'm like, I'm going to go for it.
Do it. Do it up. All right. It says, I know that AER is normally reserved for the pastors, usually Kyle. So this is a long-time listener, it sounds like. But I wanted to chime in on the topic of disability from episode 408. I'd call it a recantation, but it's probably more repentance than anything else. I want to thank whoever submitted that question. I was reminded how privileged I am and humbled because I know that I haven't spent very much time thinking about this topic. It was such a timely and needed question that brought conviction in my life and a fresh reminder about what it means to have the heart of Jesus for every person around us, regardless of their physical or mental ability or disability. Truly, I thank you so much for the person who submitted that question. And I know we felt very much the same way, Kyle.
Yeah.
After the episode recording, we said that was awesome.
So important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you alongside that person for, one, the submission of the question, but I also really appreciate this person reaching out to acknowledge that. When I got that AER, I was very thrilled. These are the kind of moments, and this is the kind of response that we can only hope for with podcasts like this, that this podcast makes a difference, helps us all think and be challenged, hopefully soften our hearts towards what Jesus is doing and where he calls us. So thank you to both parties on engaging with this subject, and hope we'll continue to challenge you more.
Well, and I liked it too because the question, we answer it as pastors and thinking obviously about our own church context, first of all. But I appreciate that, yes, people who are listening to the podcast also have to wrestle with this. Yeah. And, obviously a lot of our listeners probably attend church here or somewhere else and then have to wrestle with, okay, so what does my church do? What is my role, right? This isn't just a pastoral or leadership issue. This is a church, like all of us belonging to the body, and how do we, do well for the people in the body, right?
Totally.
So,
there are many weeks where I leave the podcast and go, I wish we could just do this in front of everybody on Sunday morning.
Oh, yeah.
Because some of these conversations are harder to fit into the medium of a sermon and what people expect of church. But to have a conversation around disability within the church like we did on the podcast last week, and hopefully it wasn't just one person, though I'm thankful for even just one, that heard and were challenged by that. These are sometimes the things we need to all be challenged by to be able to come into church healthily with a mentality of hospitality towards others. And so, again, thankful for this space very much so.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish we could transfer it just into Sunday morning too.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. All right, well, we'll keep going with some questions then.
We're not going to pick up where we left off
No.
to acknowledge that, because we said we were going to do that
Right, okay.
last week. So if you were expecting us to come back with our list of all these resources, we did not put two and two together and realized Doug was going to be away. We normally try to record extra episodes ahead so that we have all three of us here, but we didn't do that, and so I would definitely be regretting if we did this conversation without Doug and his list. I'm sure many listeners would want his list also on some of these subjects. So we're going to skip that one and continue on to this person's list of questions they sent all together.
Perfect. All right, so the first question is around manna. If manna came back today, what modern food do you secretly hope it would taste like?
Oh, you know what? I think we did that one, didn't
Did we do that one? Yeah.
I think you
'cause-
said pizza.
No, I said
Doug
burgers.
said pizza. You said burgers.
Yeah.
I said both. Those are both good options. But I said Mexican would be nice because you can get some change out of flavor.
Yeah, and we did the next one, strangest thing.
Yep.
Sorry. So we were not prepared to answer. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we didn't cross those ones out.
This is the first question of the day then. All right, everybody ready?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Rank biblical plagues from most terrifying to mild inconvenience.
Well, I'm just looking up the list so I don't miss any.
Well, see, and I was wondering if you or I would do that. When you look at biblical plagues, I'm wondering if the person is saying, are you talking the 10 plagues that were given to Egypt? Because
that's what I
there's
was
other
assuming.
plagues in the Bible besides
Correct.
just the Egyptian plagues.
I'm thinking for simplicity's sake, we take those 10 and rank them. That
All right.
was my
Well, I think you shouldn't.
assumption.
I shouldn't. Don't think you should be able to look them up because we did this at Young Adults the other day. We just said what are the 10 plagues, and we had to go through and get them all. So
It's too late. You already have them in front of me here.
cheater.
Well, I think Death of the Firstborn has to take the top slot of most terrifying.
Yeah, that's not mildly
No,
inconvenient. That's
that one's the hardest.
yeah, totally.
So that one's an easy one out of the bat. Darkness, I think that's pretty much mild inconvenience. As somebody who lives in Alberta, the middle of winter, it basically is a plague of darkness for the depth of winter. It's like, hey, open my eyes. We got a little bit of sun, and there it goes.
Yeah.
Down to like, what, 6 hours of sunlight at some points, it feels like here.
Yes, totally.
So that one I could feel like I could deal with because I'm pretty close to it now that we could deal with that for a few months.
No, the darkness one is always interesting to me because that's one of the ones that did not happen to the Israelites.
Yeah.
So the Hebrew people, they don't live in darkness. The Egyptians do. So I'm always like, was there like this dividing line where you could stick your hand in and it was like dark and not dark? Like how did that work, right?
This is an argument for flat Earth. We're gonna get some AER in that one.
Well, we already got one coming, so it's
Oh, man.
you already dipped your toes in that. So
I think. Okay, if I'm looking at them still, I think frogs would be more convenient than lice, flies, boils, locusts. Because frogs at least stay on the ground. The locusts and the flies can get everywhere.
yeah, frogs would just be gross.
Yeah.
And if you're a young boy, you'd probably be like, this is awesome. There's frogs everywhere, right?
Totally. The blood, I think, would be pretty high for me. Can't find any water and
No, that
everything's blood. That one's right under Death of the Firstborn, I think, for me.
That's a little terrifying.
Yeah,
Yeah, every time you try to get water, it's just blood. That would be,
totally. The boils would be right underneath that, I think, for me.
yeah.
Yeah. The lice would be, that's the highest of all the animal ones in my mind. To have lice and to have the itch and the,
Yeah, lice is bad.
yeah. Flies right underneath that for me. Pestilence, how would you define pestilence outside of pestilence?
What is,
I don't know. That's just what the overview's writing out for me here. So we got boils. That one's pretty bad. Hail. Again, Albertan.
well, hail that's killing people.
That's
though.
true.
Like livestock and anything left outside was killed by the hail. That might be terrifying. Like if you've been in a hailstorm in Alberta,
Yeah.
you know that that's scary. Like if you've been in a car in a hailstorm,
Yeah.
when it's like thundering down on you and you're wondering if your windshield is going to like provide shelter.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And I guess I'm imagining these. If these were all to strike again today,
Right.
in what order? I was not thinking of enjoying them. That's having to experience them in the ancient world.
Right.
I was thinking, okay, if they all hit today,
okay. Yeah.
right? So we have houses and cars that we can duck into.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
That I was thinking that one, as an Albertan, we have a serious hailstorm at least once a summer. It feels
Sure,
like
okay, yeah.
that I could avoid that one as long as I'm close enough to indoors. If I'm out camping,
Yeah.
that's about the only time where I'm truly caught outside with that one. That's the phrasing I was thinking. So pestilence is a deadly disease that kills a large portion of the Egyptian livestock. That one.
Oh, that's
pretty
the
high.
livestock. Okay, because I was going to say
Yeah.
the livestock one, depending on how financially tied you are to farming
Yeah.
or your livelihood, like you get up in the morning and all your animals are dead,
Yep.
that could be very terrifying.
Even if you're not directly, like that would affect our Albertan economy, I think, pretty heavily, right?
Drastically, yes.
So even if it's not direct effect to you, there's a big trickle down that's hitting us as a province, period.
Yeah.
So that one would probably rank pretty high too.
Yeah, that like as far as terrifying, like I'm thinking, okay, what would freak me out
Yep.
if you realized all the cattle in your own field, I guess I'm a farm kid, were dead, and then you realize all the cattle in that guy's field are dead, and then like it starts to get creepy really quickly as to what's going on, right?
Yep.
Like
We had this is a total side conversation, but we had the night of death. We refer to it as at our house when we were kids growing up. We had a leopard gecko, which was supposed to live like 20 years. We had a bunny, a bunch of fish, a dog, and one other animal at one point. And the bunny, the leopard gecko, and all the fish died in one night, and the bunny was outside in a cage. The leopard gecko was in my room in a cage, and it was only like a year old, and the fish were all in the family room. So like it wasn't even that, like it wasn't just a gas leak in the house because the bunny was outside.
Right.
We still to this day have no idea what happened that night, but 3 different places, a bunch of animals all died. That was freaky.
Yeah, so
that would get me for sure.
that would scare you.
Been there, done that.
Right. Okay.
It's spooky. So I don't think we put them in proper order, but I feel like we talked
Enough about terrifying
through them all.
plagues.
At least I'm satisfied with my rankings. Where are you up? Like, you happy with yours?
Yeah, I think we're all right with that.
All right. There we are.
All right.
And question number 6 of this person's list.
Yes. Is Chick-fil-A the Lord's chicken?
I'm so thankful Doug's not here to chime in on this, because the only answer you're going to get from this podcast now, because Doug's not here, is yes. Yes, Chick-fil-A is the Lord's chicken, and there's no counter opinion here because Doug's not here to argue with it. Yes, that's why they even are closed on Sundays, because Jesus loves Chick-fil-A and Chick-fil-A loves Jesus.
There you go.
It's so good.
Those chickens dying for people's enjoyment are doing it sacrificially.
Yeah,
Doing their job for the Lord and for the kingdom.
totally. Totally.
All right. Which of your past episodes on our podcast do you think you would have gotten stoned for the fastest in the first century?
That one I have a really hard time answering. We've entitled this podcast Inverted Orthodoxy, where I feel like for the most part, for the whole, we aim to be orthodox. We aim to be in line with Christian thinking. Within the first century, I don't know. Like,
Well, you and your Adam and Eve stuff.
but that's not even forward, because Augustine in the 300s uncontroversially writes in his book a literal translation of Genesis
Yeah.
that there's no way it could be referencing a full week of creation like a human week, because he says on day 4 the sun and the moon are created, and a day is governed by the sun and moon. How can we have a real day if there's no sun and moon? And he writes that in the 300s uncontroversially.
300s, but that's 300 years past when the Jews would have like...
Totally. But there was no controversy then. I think the controversy actually comes later when we have a like an evolution-minded world that the Christians then take conflict with. That I think even that and evolution are later controversies that wouldn't have been in the first century. They understood the world was round before Jesus' time through mathematics. Like, I don't think that would have been that scary to them.
So I guess when I think about getting stoned, I don't think the Christians were stoning anybody. I think of this as like the Jews. So the Jews were okay with a non-literal 7-day.
I think so.
I'm just asking. I'm not accusing you.
That's my
I'm
best
asking.
guess.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't see why that would have been a problem. I think the Jews actually, better than Christians historically,
Probably.
had a more mythological understanding of how Scripture was written.
Yeah.
Right? Than even Christians at different points have.
Yeah. And
So
I think
again,
the Bema podcast, which we've referenced often on this podcast,
yeah.
is really good at that,
Yep.
showing how, the Jewish faith is just easy to wrestle with God
Yep.
compared to looking for certainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of my more controversial ideas, like evolution and creation, like nonviolence. Nonviolent is the only way early Christians lived.
Absolutely. That
Right?
I got stoned for that one.
That wasn't come again. Augustine's time is actually where that starts to shift.
Yeah.
where they write the first ideas for just war and all that. So I genuinely, and this is why I try to follow the beliefs that I do, because I think they're right. I don't think they're crazy controversial. So I have a hard time being able to answer that one.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with you. Like, I think, Kyle, you and I have been on that adventure together a little bit, just of understanding first few centuries Christianity, early Christianity, and going, how do we go back to that? Because I probably agree on that. That is like the earliest. This is how Jesus lived, so this is how we want to live. Yeah. Without a whole lot of the filters and layers and all the rest of centuries and centuries have built onto Christianity. Yeah. That was the unfiltered, this is it, right? Yeah. So how do we get back to that? And I think if we're advocating for that through our podcast, which we probably are in a lot of ways. Yeah. I don't know that we got stoned for it. So I'd appreciate AER on that. AER though, if you think we're like,
we'd love the public opinion on this one.
Crazy. This is just you and I patting our own backs going, no, we're good.
Which of course we're going to. If I was holding opinions that I thought were wrong, I wouldn't hold them. So that's a hard question to answer. So I would love some input from the listeners if you've got it. But I also think the early Christians, as far as we know, didn't do any stoning. They were the ones that were, if anything, were being stoned.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it would be from a Jewish perspective. Like, where would we
the fact that we like Jesus and call him God would be our best shot at getting stoned.
Maybe that's probably not the way the person writing this question wrote it.
Correct.
But it would be any mention of Jesus. Correct. Would be the first thing we would get stoned for.
Yeah. And our comfort with modern capitalism and empire would be the second one, I think. That would be most blasphemous to the early church.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely. Like I read John's letter in Revelation and go, yeah, I've got some untangling to do of my life, and I'm really comfortable with the way that I live.
Yeah, that's such a misconception. We've talked about it often on this podcast, and even within our church, is just Revelation and how modern day Christians cheer and wait and applaud for this day of apocalypse to come and rectify all the wrong in our world. Yeah. And that, I do wonder what John would think about that.
Yeah. So the things that are probably least controversial on this podcast are probably actually the ones that would get us stoned the fastest.
Yeah, that might be true. Yeah. It might be true.
Awesome.
All right, we'll keep going. If Paul wrote your church a letter today, what do you think he would say?
This is an awesome question, and I probably should have prepared further ahead. I try not to do that with this podcast. I would first take a little bit of difference with the way the question was phrased. And so I'm just using this as an excuse to kind of do a little lesson around how our New Testament's formed. So for instance, when we get the book of Romans, this is Paul's letter to the church in Rome. Now, this is not a singular church in Rome. If I can remember correctly, they know of about 8 or 9 different home churches that were meeting at that time in Rome. Yep. And so when Paul writes that letter and sends it through Phoebe for her to bring the letter, she would have gone around to each one of those gatherings or have them all gathered together. So there was not a singular church in Rome. There were multiple churches that would have shared certain characteristics that Paul was writing to when he wrote that letter to the church in Rome. So it more accurately could be described, but the language of the church in Rome is the unifying language, while practically it was the letter to the churches in Rome. That would have struggled with similar things. And so he was able to write to the characteristics of Rome. So the letter to Living Springs would not be the right comparison as much as to the letter to the church in Airdrie. Yeah. So to answer with that in mind,
I could even broaden it out to maybe Alberta, right? Depending on how many letters he felt like writing.
Yeah, right. So I try to think of it through those terms. What is it that our city and our context needs to hear? And kind of piggybacking off that last question, our desire and our proclivity towards comfort, and our unwillingness to get uncomfortable, whether it be emotionally, whether it be financially, whether it be of our time. I feel the weight of that one heavily on a regular basis, and I don't do nearly enough about it, if I'm being really honest. That I believe Paul's language for us today would have a lot to do with our acceptance of the consumeristic ends that we live for, and our using the individualism of our own time. We give mostly out of what is left as a culture. I know that rings true for me. I'm not thinking of any one individual, but we like to make sure we have our ducks in a row before we go and give elsewhere. And Paul wasn't okay with that in his writing, and I think we've just amplified that more and more today. Our desire to justify things based on our own feelings and our own comfort, and we believe our emotions to be first and highest truth, I think he would take serious issue with. So those are a few that jump out to me for our world and for myself.
Yeah, I'd very much agree with you. I think I guess two different but similar ways to think of Paul writing letters. Like Paul wrote those letters like Ephesians and Philippians and all that to the general areas and general churches. Obviously, Paul did not write the book of Revelation, but I think of John's, recording to the church of Laodicea, the church of whatever. I won't list them all, but I think of that language, right? Like, to the Laodiceans, I think it was, you forgot your first love, right? To another church, he says, that you're lukewarm, right? You're neither hot nor cold. Yeah. And I think those phrases stick with me. And I think that's why they're there, is because they're, relevant for all centuries. So we're probably not the only, church to experience this, or churches to experience this, or time to experience this. Yeah. But anytime Jesus is not first.
Yep.
And I think there's multiple reasons for that, and multiple cultural reasons, because we get distracted by our world so often.
Yep.
With our young adults the other night, we were doing the parable of the sower of the seed.
Yeah.
And I was just challenging them by saying, for me, I've been a Christian my whole life, basically. I've known about Jesus and gone to church and had parents and all the rest who have led me that way. Mm-hmm. So I can read that parable so quickly and just go, well, I'm the good seed, right? I'm the good earth, right? That's multiplying and it's great. And then I'm quick to judge other people, you're the rocky and you're the whatever. Yeah. But thinking of it more personally through a day-to-day lens and going, how often am I just distracted by the things of the world, the worries of the world?
Yeah.
How often do I spring up quickly and I'm like all for Jesus, but the next day I'm not because of other things, right? How often does the influence of the world play into my decisions and what I do?
Yeah, the one of the weeds is the one that gets me every time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So thinking through all that, then I think your answer is correct. Like Paul would have lots to say to our modern day church as far as just saying, are you all for Jesus or not? I think that's the question that we always get. And do we trust Jesus? Like that's the bigger one for me always, is I think Jesus constantly asks that personally, but also to our churches.
Yeah.
Like how willing are we to be surrendered totally to this cause?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Paul would speak a lot to our primary identities that we allow to go ahead of Jesus, which he does a lot throughout the New Testament writings that we have of his anyways.
Yeah.
And included in that, our identities and our value we see of ourselves sexually. And I'm not just speaking to sexual minorities there. I think the way we've elevated the nuclear family, I think the way that we've idolized sex in our modern world, he would have a lot to say about that.
Absolutely.
But then all the other ways that we value our own identity, whether it be through finances, whether it be through political affiliation, whatever, we have siloed ourselves in so many different ways to be unable to speak across whatever aisle it may be. He would have a lot to say about that as he has previously, but he would update his language for our time that we think, well, I'm not an idolater because I've never sat down and worshipped XYZ Roman God. Of course you haven't. But what are the other things he would speak to, whether it be, political affiliations, sports teams, well, I don't know, whatever it may be, that we have put as idols in our life and primary identity markers instead of Jesus that we have allowed to divide Christ Church.
Yeah. I think we just keep going as you're speaking. I got more ideas. I think, Galatians 3, Paul lays out this really great, a little bit hard to understand, but if you dig in, you get it, this idea that we are not under the law anymore.
Right.
And he makes a legal argument to saying, if these things are contractual and they're binding, then the first one was the covenant that he made with Abraham, that is by faith that you are saved. Yeah. Then he adds the law and says, now you have the law to show you what sin is so that you will, aim for righteousness. Yeah. And then says there's a conclusion to this, and that is Christ. He will fulfill the law.
Totally.
And so when Christ comes, we are no longer under the law. Yeah. Well, we're 2,000 years from Christ, and we live under the law like crazy. Totally. Right? Which Old Testament
our new
laws.
law. We totally like bacon, but other than that, we pick and choose the ones we want to implement.
We'll pick and choose and all the rest. Like I think Paul would seriously have some things to say, like, are you serious? I dealt with this in the first century. Like, why are we still talking about this, right? I think that would be one. One thing as we went through the Galatians and even in Corinthians that has really stuck out to me is Paul's seeming interest in unity within the church. Yep. Just this, like, you guys need to be unified. Yep. And when you look at, our churches today, I think he would still be saying, I still think that's important, right?
Come on. Yeah, totally. Well, there's so much more we could say there, but we probably should leave there. I would hope Paul makes some edits and some clarity on some of the things. So he's going to convince us that predestination isn't what some people have taken it to be. He's going to affirm women in ministry, and he's going to give us some clarity around some of those more controversial things.
That is not how Paul writes. We would have more questions after he was done.
I know, unfortunately.
And Jesus would be just fine with that.
Yeah. Oh man! This is hilarious. I didn't even know this one was coming up today after my earlier comment.
Oh, I didn't. You see, that's why I read.
I didn't see.
It says, "Blake, I'm looking at you." Just kidding. We all know it's Kyle. Who's most likely to get accidentally booked to speak at a flat Earth conference?
Maybe as a controversial opposing person on the panel, I would hope for me, but. Maybe my enjoyment of conspiracy theories is what got me looked at there. But
I was saying, for me, my people pleasing, I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds good. And then all of a sudden it'd be on a panel, I'm like, no, that's not.
Oh man, that's so funny. Who's most likely? I don't know. Since he's not here, we'll just pick on Doug. Doug loves a good conspiracy theory, so let's just go with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Doug.
Doug can be rebellious by nature, so I could see if everybody was just like the world's round, he'd be like,
he wanted to push back against the norm. Yeah. Okay, I like that logic. Let's go with it.
All right, the questions around the living word. What's a Bible passage that has surprised you lately, not in its meaning, but in how it hits you differently than before? That's a great question.
That's an awesome question. I publicly got to share about it with my sermon on 1 Corinthians 11, going through the head coverings. I just loved getting to sit in that one. And the language I was using leading up to the sermon, I've kind of used it again a couple times since. Like I loved seeing that passage, instead of having to be freed from like subjugation of women or being misunderstood, to see it actually point to Jesus and his value and his love for people, and setting people free, which is the complete opposite of, I think, how most people approach that passage. So I thoroughly love getting to study that one a little bit more. There's probably other answers too, but that one I just have so many big feelings about on the heel end of getting to write that sermon a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, there's lots I've been bouncing around lately. The Psalms, I have an interesting relationship with. I regularly can read a psalm for myself and really got not much out of it. Like I think I get lost in the language a little bit, and I'm more black and white and I'm more application than I think the Psalms lead me first to. Yeah. But I've been reading using liturgical prayer book. I'm trying to think of a better way of saying that. But just reading through prayers that have been pre-written, and a lot of them are Psalms, obviously, and to see somebody else take joy or meaning or directness out of a psalm, and then for me to be able to read it with their words has helped. So just a freshness in the Psalms has been really good for me.
Cool.
And really appreciating using written prayers.
Awesome.
In the last little bit. So,
Yeah. They've given me so much life over the last number of years, so glad I'm not alone.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Greetings, pastors, and congratulations on number 400. This is from August 16th. So
That's right around the 400th episode there, yeah.
a little while ago. Does your church have an intervention ministry? Either way, what is your experience, perspective on the enemy and spiritual attack?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for the congratulations. It's felt like a big celebration to make it 400 episodes. That's eight and a bit years now.
Yeah, it's...
we were podcasting before it was super cool.
Yeah, this is very true.
So all the podcasts are out now. We've been doing it longer, which has been cool.
I will just add, a young lady that we've helped through her benevolent stuff just said, wow, like your podcast is really good. I just listened to it the other day.
That's awesome.
And I didn't say this to her, but I'll say it here because it makes sense. It's just, I hope so. Yeah. Because we've been doing it for a long time, right? This isn't something we just started in our closet yesterday. So just.
That's awesome. Yeah. I did go to a workshop on podcasting actually at one point at a conference.
Right.
And one of the things they said is your first 100 episodes, you're just figuring stuff out.
Yeah.
Right. And most podcasts don't make it to 100 episodes.
Right.
And so past that is when you really have hit your groove. And so we're a little bit past that, 100 now. So I hope that we've refined it. And we know from every perspective, from even just our ability to talk with one another and to understand one another, but also our audio, our video component.
Oh, yeah.
That has all grown exponentially.
So much goes into this.
Yeah.
And so much we probably don't have figured out and fly by the seat of our pants still to some degree, right? So
totally. By episode 500, we'll have even more figured out.
Right.
Yeah. But to the meat of your question, because that one's easy to pat ourselves on the back and excited. And I'm thankful that we've got a community that listen. First is our church have an intervention ministry. Funny that you asked that because we got an email about that just this week. And my answer to that email, as well as to your question, is not in a formal sense by any means. We have people and we have had ministries doing soul care specifically I can think of that have done that. In the past, we had our inner healing prayer kind of structure. I wouldn't even call it a formalized ministry that has also dealt with that. So we have had spaces that have done spiritual intervention in some capacities while not making it forefront or on the offense, I would say. You can correct me if that's not helpful language.
No, I agree with you.
Which, as somebody who grew up in the charismatic world that I did, that it was easy to look for a demon under every rock. And then in my own life, probably overcorrecting that pendulum to, in many ways, be outside of the Father and the Son, and even then half the time not the Holy Spirit, be largely agnostic to things of the spiritual world for a long time. Recorrecting now, I think, I hopefully much more centered. I have a deep belief and in things of the spiritual realm affecting daily life without that having to be everything being a spiritual attack.
Yep.
And so I've tried to land somewhere in the middle personally. And then I think that's why I really enjoy our church. I think we landed, I think, in a very similar spot. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're doing good.
So we, once a year, offer soul care, and deliverance is a part of that for sure. I've been a part of praying with people, and I'm aware of other times people have been prayed for within our church where that has become language we are comfortable with and feel in that moment needs to be something that's addressed. Meanwhile, that is not the preface of every time we're praying together with people. I believe the brokenness and the evil of this world causes enough trouble of its own to not have to be directly spiritual attack. When we pray for people with sickness, I don't believe a demon is stoking that, while also knowing it's the brokenness of this world that the enemy is a part of that then leaves sickness in its wake. And so in indirect sense, we are always dealing with spiritual impact without dealing with spiritual attack. If I could, hopefully that's helpful language there. And so we have a number of people who would lean on either side of me on this conversation, and there's space for that here in our church. I have people that I'm aware of that would pray for an intervention and spiritual attack on a more regular basis. And they'd be the first people I would call in a sense of if I was feeling that that was something that was needed to be addressed in a place, because I know and I trust them in that, even if I don't have the same lens for it as they do, that we would reach out to. So it's a really kind of, I hope, middle ground perspective on that for myself.
Yeah, I would. I'll speak to it. Soul care. I lead soul care, so I guess this one kind of falls under my leadership. Yeah, I agree with everything you say, Kyle, and I agree with we have people in our church for sure who would be of a conservative bent where, even to the point where, we can't be demonized because we have the Holy Spirit within us. And so if you were to ask them to pray for you, if you thought you needed deliverance of some sort, they would do it in that way, right? We have people on the other side who, yes, probably more versed in dealing with this kind of thing and would jump to it. If you're asking me to do this with you, or you are asking someone under the guise of ministry perspective that I have control over, then it would be much more asking a lot of questions. I feel like the experience I have, and I don't have a lot, but I think I have a lot more than others. And I've seen deliverance done in a few different ways now, and I have done deliverance myself. I think I've seen results. I've seen God move in miraculous ways in people's lives. But I have a firm belief that God's number one desire is for our heart and soul, that he wants relationship with us more than he wants us to be fixed. And often we come to Jesus with these problems, a physical, mental healing that we want, or a relational conflict that we want fixed, or even something that we believe is enemy attack and spiritual attack and could even be in the need of deliverance. I have no problem admitting or saying those things are all real.
Totally.
But I still believe Jesus' number one thing that he wants is relationship. I believe freedom comes quickly on the heels of that. But the questions and the way that I would lead intervention or deliverance in our church or with an individual or with group would be, okay, let's stop and find out what Jesus wants us to do in this moment. We do everything through the ministry of prayer. We take time for our leaders to pray and hear what God is saying to us. We invite and include the people that we are ministering to pray and listen for themselves. And then we follow as best we can the Holy Spirit's guiding in what we do next. I guess I'll say this. I will always try to meet immediate need of a person who comes to me and wants some sort of help. So if someone comes to me and says they are demonized, I want to meet that need. And I would do my best to do that. But if, and I thought this was wise, and often I will slow the process down. In the real cases where I've seen people who've been demonized, they've been like that for a while. And their need of deliverance in that moment probably isn't as great as the deliverance that can be found if we go through a process to get there. Soul care, I would have way more confidence in someone being delivered and being delivered well if they'd gone through soul care first than if we just jump right to that.
That's nice.
And I think that is biblical. I think Jesus talks about, we can kick demons out and they can just turn around and come back with their friends and occupy a space again. And that's because we don't deal with the soul issues that are attached to why the demonic have the ability to impact our lives. When we deal with those soul issues, then we have the authority of Jesus in our lives and as believers collectively together to say, not anymore. And that is when we find true freedom true freedom.
I got you.
in Christ. And so I know some people are like, no, we need to get this fixed right away. And like I said, I would never deny somebody that. I would pray with anybody. But I would hope that people would give me just a little bit of grace to say, okay, let's go through this and do it well. Because I believe Jesus frees people, and I have seen, like I say, some really miraculous things that just happen when people are willing to follow the Holy Spirit through a process. So Yeah, hopefully that answers your questions. If you have more questions about this, or you are in need or feel like you're in need of this, please reach out to me directly, and let's let Jesus do some cool stuff. So,
on Doug's behalf, I know he often will mention there's 4 different influences in the world.
yeah,
All right. Sin, like spiritual enemy, ourselves, and God. Only one of those 3 doesn't enforce its view in its world of things.
Yeah.
And so taking those 3 into account, I think all 3 of those in a lot of ways, including ourselves and our allegiance to broken ways of living, can all be summed up in loose definitions as enemy.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think you've been alluding to some stuff there also of taking care of the right and the real issue, so that we don't just clean out the one and then it's filled up other ways. That I think is really helpful to acknowledge. Jesus asked us to partner with his work. Mm-hmm. And that comes in all 3 of those spheres to welcome the 4th one in.
Yeah.
Right. So that is going to mean there's going to be a level of impact on the world. So a sickness, we can also take medicine while praying for healing.
Yeah.
Some kind of broken behavior and sin pattern, I can take responsibility for my continued going back to it, and try to take ownership versus just blame a demon for it. I remember, I'm not going to go into examples or silly ways of talking about that, but it's not one or the other necessarily, right? So all of these, in a sense, are enemy because they are anti-Christ.
Yep.
That all need to be dealt with. So again, depending on how you are defining this in your question, we assumed the one sense, and I think we're right in doing so for this conversation. But to acknowledge, and I know he's regularly used those 4 different influences, to recognize 3 of the 4 are enemy,
Yes.
including myself, to the way of Jesus, and that we offer those to him in our healing, in our brokenness. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. I will say, I guess I'll just add on to that. The more I engage in deliverance ministry, the more I think it's not something to be fearful of. Like, I think it's something to be excited about and celebrate that we find freedom in Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's a cool thing. So,
yeah. Awesome.
All right. Next question. Is it a choice or feeling to forgive someone? Is it a problem to choose not to forgive them if you don't feel they are truly sorry? What about if someone doesn't know they upset you? Should you still forgive them when they hurt you very badly, even if they don't know they hurt you? Why can it be so hard to forgive people? Any advice on forgiveness? That is a full question.
A number of them. Is it a choice or a feeling to forgive someone? Yes. It can be both. It can be one or the other. I think more often than not, it'll have to be a choice more than a feeling.
Yep.
I don't think always the good feeling of that is going to come with the choice right away. Sometimes, if ever. I think we have a lot of misunderstanding and poor teaching around forgiveness. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times people assume forgiveness means entirely letting it go and going back to normal.
Yeah.
That is not the case. Unless Jesus calls us to that, or we feel specifically that's what needs to be done. The idea of restoration of relationship is not back one-to-one. Mm-hmm. Though it's not about forgiveness, I think Jesus' language, when he's sending out the 72 and the towns won't accept them, knock the dust off your feet and go on elsewhere.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's comparable to this conversation. There's a wisdom in recognizing when you're not able to restore relationship back to that same sense, but the refusal to forgive and to let go of that is only something that's on you.
Yeah.
They can choose to participate in that themselves if they want, but the danger is not on that other person that you can control. Is there a problem to choose not to forgive them if you don't feel they're truly sorry? Absolutely it is.
Yeah.
And I wish I had a nicer answer for you for that.
True.
I wish I could just rile you up and myself and go, yeah, screw them. They don't deserve your forgiveness.
Yeah.
It's not a Jesus quote.
No.
There is a true danger to your heart and to your soul if you choose not to forgive them, regardless of whether they feel sorry or not. There are a number of reasons why that can happen. One, they can just be bitter and they can be angry and they can feel justified in whatever wrong they did. They can be ignorant, as you've already addressed, and we'll get there in a bit. But there's also times where I know people have had to forgive somebody who's dead and literally can't ask for apology. And in all of those worlds, and I'm sure there are others that I'm missing, it is not that person who in the end is actually probably suffering the most from your unforgiveness, but it is you.
Yeah.
The language around unforgiveness, I'm sure many of us have heard the story of unforgiveness is like swallowing poison and hoping the other person dies.
Yeah.
Right? It is a festering wound that will become infected of bitterness in your heart to not forgive. And so it is for your good, just as much as theirs, that you need to embrace forgiveness as hard as it is. And I'm not trying to make that easy when we have been wronged. And I think we all, if I say a bitter person, we've all got 3 or 4 people that come to mind, I'm sure, because we know there are people, especially living later into life, that continue patterns of unforgiveness and bitterness, that we just see that even sometimes physically manifested in the way their faces sit and all that into their older age. I'm not saying every person with a resting angry face is actually that, but I just know there are people that I'm aware of in their 70s, 80s, 90s that have just lived the last 2, 3, 4 decades of their life bitter and angry and unforgiving, and it wears on them.
Mm-hmm.
So without even bringing Jesus into the conversation, which I'm not going to do for long, there's already real implications on your life if we don't, that we all see, but especially as Christians. As ones who have been forgiven, that is something that cannot sit still in our lives. It must go out.
Yeah.
Jesus' warnings are clear to us. If we will not forgive, we will not be forgiven.
Yeah, that's, to me, Kyle, that is like scary language.
Yeah.
And I think we've all experienced it where we think that we are forgiven and embrace God's grace and goodness to us.
Yeah.
But we'll hold somebody account for their wrong, sinful, hurtful, terrible actions.
Yeah.
And think that that is okay when Jesus clearly said it wasn't, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Their story is not the condition you need for forgiveness, but it's the releasing of it from your heart. It's the language that I've heard, the image I've seen painted to kind of catch that words of Jesus of, unless you forgive, you won't be forgiven. It's just like this steady river, right? It's just flowing. We must allow forgiveness to flow into us by letting it flow out of us. So for you releasing, there's a video from Nadia Boltz-Weber. I want to say it's under 5 minutes, and I can't even cite the name of the video now because it will. I know we've got little ears that occasionally listen to this. It's "Forgiving A-Holes" is the video on there, and she talks about forgiveness is actually like it's an offensive thing. I refuse to associate with how wrong your behavior was that I'm not even going to let it stay in my life. I'm going to release it instead of holding on to it.
That's good.
Right? And there's something really powerful about that idea. It is a weapon of protest to the evil in this world. To forgive, you actually are giving that wrong power the more you hold on to it.
Yeah.
And it's, again, going to only affect you, not somebody else. If somebody doesn't know they upset you, should you still forgive them? Yes. And they hurt you badly, even if they don't know they hurt you? Yes. In fact, I think for me, that's the easier time to forgive when I can gain that perspective.
Well, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but I assume that more often than not, the people that we're holding bitterness towards or unforgiveness of don't know how much they've offended us.
Correct.
They might not know they've offended us at all, but even if they do think they've offended us, they do not realize at the level that we have taken the offense.
Correct.
At all.
Yeah. I have many times found out later I hurt somebody's feelings. I had no idea. I would have never done what I did.
Exactly.
Knowing that.
Yeah.
And I hope that's a common human experience that I'm not alone in. But one of the things I was chatting with somebody recently about this, one of the things that's helped my heart stay in a really healthy spot is actually just accepting that people are broken and they're human, and assume most people are not genuinely evil out to get others.
Yeah.
And just to accept people for where they're at and expect not a lot from them. Maybe that sounds awful, but I don't expect a lot from people. I try to just receive them as they are versus who I want them to be.
Yeah.
So if somebody's hurt you, unknowingly is the likely scenario, or at least unknowingly to the degree that they did. To release that, actually, like I said, for me, it becomes a little bit easier when I can assume a level of ignorance.
Yeah.
If they had known, they probably wouldn't have done that.
Right.
So I can let them off the hook from that. That's me. Obviously, this is whatever has happened is sitting heavily on this person's heart. I'm sorry for that. I'm not trying to make light of this.
No, not at all.
And I would love to hear from you personally if you wanted to reach out and talk. That's, again, something we try to extend regularly on some of these more pastoral questions.
Yeah.
We would love to sit with you and process some of this stuff. It's not okay whatever happened.
No.
I can agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
But choosing to hold on to it is only harming you more than them. The reason why it can be so hard. Oh, sorry, I need to keep going. Do you want to jump in at all, Blake?
Well, I was going to say the one thing that you said without saying it is two things around trust. First of all, forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. So back to what you originally said.
Yeah.
We forgive people. It does not mean we trust people.
Yep.
People earn trust,
Yep.
right? And you can demand that in your life. That's healthy boundaries. That's all those things. If you've hurt me, Kyle,
Yep.
I believe God asked me to forgive you, and I want to extend that forgiveness.
Yep.
But what you did comes at a cost and a consequence of our relationship, and now we need to rebuild that.
Totally.
And that is on you as much as me to do that,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So those things help us understand forgiveness.
Yeah.
That just because I forgive you doesn't mean I need to trust you, right?
Yeah.
And then secondly, I think forgiveness is fully trusting God.
Yes.
I am turning you over to God, Kyle. If you've hurt me, yeah, that sucks in every way. But again, I'm supposed to extend that grace and forgiveness. So I choose to do that. Back to this language that the questioner asked. Yes, it is a choice.
Yeah.
There's many things that God does to us by his grace.
Yeah.
This one is not on God. This one is on us.
Yep.
We choose to do the forgiving.
Yeah.
So I choose to forgive you. But in doing that, I stop holding you accountable. I stop wanting and waiting for you to pay me back for whatever you've done, because you probably never will and might not even know you did and may not even be able to.
Yep.
So I'm not holding you accountable to that anymore.
Yep.
But I'm turning you over to God, and I'm believing that because I've done that, God can heal my soul.
Yep.
I trust God to do that.
Yep.
And often, unfortunately, and this is hard language for us as Christians to understand and hear maybe or accept, is that when I hold on to bitterness or I hold on to unforgiveness, it is a direct non-trust of God.
That's so good.
I'm saying if I forgive you, Kyle, I will not get what I need or desire or want in this world, and I don't think God can do it.
That's so good,
And
Blake.
so I really think that those two things go hand in hand. And back to that relationship, the number one thing that God wants with you is relationship. And when we hold unforgiveness, there is a definite block to a relationship with God.
Yeah.
And yes, we see the real results later in life of people who've lived a long life of unforgiveness, because you see how bitter they get.
Yeah.
But even young people, you might not see it, but they are living consequence to holding on to unforgiveness.
Very much so. Yeah, I didn't mean to paint
No.
just older people.
Yeah.
But you see the pattern of that wearing for a long time.
Absolutely, yeah.
On souls. And that's so good, Blake, which I think connects very directly to the second last of these questions. It's that trust in Jesus. Like, really coming back to that one, why can it be so hard to forgive people? Because we don't genuinely trust that Jesus' right will be the final thing that wins.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that harshly or critically to the person there. I can struggle with the same thing.
Yeah, it's just being honest.
Yeah, right? If I believe Jesus will make all wrongs right at the fullness of his kingdom, I can let go of those things because I know his victory will be complete. And it's any amount of distance between where I sit in that true belief, that is where forgiveness can live.
Yeah.
Right? And so it can be based on that. For one, just thinking, how can that right be or wrong be made right? It can be around identity of, but I'm worth more.
And so much comes back to our identity, right?
Yeah.
It's, if I fully believe that my value is settled at the cross, that Christ died for me because he loves me, then I don't need to worry if I'm going to miss out on something if I offer forgiveness.
Totally.
If I don't have that settled in my soul, then yes, I'm going to hang on because forgiving you makes me feel less than.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right. And so the belief there, the trust in God's victory is one, like, I think looking to Jesus, even speaking about the ignorance of somebody's wrong. Jesus' words on the cross, forgive them for they know not what they do.
Yeah.
Now, what did he mean by that?
Right.
Right? Like those soldiers who crucified Jesus, crucifixion was a very common thing in Rome. They were probably specialized in that and probably had performed hundreds, if not thousands, of crucifixions.
Mm-hmm.
They knew what they did.
Yeah.
If it's a practical sense there, we see some wrestling with Pilate.
Mm-hmm.
I think he clearly knew what he had done.
Yeah.
Washing his hands to try to justify himself there. Like there is a lot. We see all the scheming of the Sadducees, which means they knew they had to come up with some plan because this wasn't just an obvious thing. So whenever Jesus says, forgive them for they know not what they do, I don't think he's actually saying they didn't know what they were doing. They don't know to what degree that it was really happening and the weight by which they were doing it. They were deceived by the ways of the thinking of the world that they had given into. And I think, again, the same thing can apply then to any forgiveness situation.
Yeah.
The brokenness of somebody's life, the why they did that, they thought they were going to get ahead, they thought they were doing right, whatever you fill in the blank of how they thought they got there. It's broken thinking within this world that they genuinely believe they're doing a good thing to some degree to be able to do what they've done. And so Jesus' words of forgive them for they know not what they do, I think we have to be able to echo with those if we're going to forgive.
Yeah.
So my advice on it, reflect on Jesus. I know that seems like such a pastor answer, but I think trusting Jesus' goodness and reflecting and looking on him and finding our identity on him just releases all the things of this world to a greater and greater degree. Next to that, I would say process with somebody who is wise, because you can then both be challenged by them to forgive, but also have the space to say, but it sucks. And they'll say, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I get it. They can balance both those. Somebody who cares for you and is wise can hold both those tensions in place with you at the same time. And so to not do forgiveness alone would be, next to the focus on Jesus, my highest advice.
Yeah.
Have somebody who is Christ-like walk you through that and cares for you.
And I think the Christ-like is important because the majority of the world is going to tell you, get your pound of flesh.
Some people are going to tell you that. Some people are going to be the doormat. It's okay, just let it go. It's not a big deal. Neither of those is right.
No.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're probably out of time, so we're going to wrap up for today. But thanks for joining us on this episode of Inverted Orthodoxy Podcast. We hope that you've enjoyed the journey. I don't know that we took too many twists and turns through faith, but hopefully we don't get stoned for this one.
There you go.
But don't forget to submit your questions. Visit us at invertedorthodoxy.com, and you can do that, submit your questions, and like us and review us wherever you can. We will see you